Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk about something fascism. An interesting word. It's being bandied about. It's this person, it's always someone's enemies. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and fascism, an interesting word, an interesting term, means, the reality is it means different things to different people. And to a lot of people, it just simply means it's kind of like people use words fascism and communism. It means something that I really don't like. It's something that's really bad. And so I've only got a couple of terms to use. So fascism is one that makes sense. Communism is one of them. It depends on where you're from. It depends on your background, on what you've been taught is bad. If you're in the United States, if you're in the Europe, you've been taught probably by the neoliberals that communism is the worst possible thing. So you, as a matter of faith, will say things are all terrible and this government's terrible, so they must be communist. And certainly that it all depends. But I look at fascism like this in reality. For me, I can't say it for everybody, but for a lot of people, it's like a flower, right? And here's what I mean. When you look at a flower, you know what the hell it is. You know what it is without a word. If you never learned how to talk, if you've never learned language, you know what it is. If you're standing in a room with a person who speaks Chinese, a person who speaks Russian, a person who speaks Farsi, who speaks, whatever, Icelandic and English, every one of them looks at that flower and they know what the hell it is, right? But where they would get confused is if they would start trying to describe the flower, because intuitively they know exactly what it is when they see it. But once they start describing it, that's when they would all get confused, right? All right. With some because of their language, some because they would get technical. Oh, that's a flower. Let's talk about what it's made of, and they would get into. Let's talk about the, correct scientific name for that particular flower, and they would get all confused. But they all know what the hell a flower is. With a lot of people, that's fascism. People feel the heat of a government that does not represent them, and a government that, a fascist government, as a rule, as I believe, are at war with their people. The fascist government is at war with its people. Now, fascism traditionally has been associated with a particular leader, a totalitarian, a leader. This is the guy in charge. If he's a left-wing fascist, then he may be Stalin. If he's a right-wing fascist, then he may be Hitler or Mussolini or whoever, right? But it's still fascism to some extent. It's still a fascist person, a fascist leader, right? So what I'm saying is that in the United States and in the Europe, let me change this. I'm going to use this term, the U.S. empire, because when I speak of the U.S. empire, I'm speaking of the U.S. and its vassal states, the U.S. and South Korea and Japan, two states that have no independence or sovereignty. They're wholly, completely, politically, militarily, economically controlled by the United States, right? The Japan is so economically controlled by the United States that in the 1980s, in the 70s, it was doing really, really well. It was, pulling ahead of the United States, and the U.S. went in and set up the, the Plaza Accords, and basically said to Japan, we want you to destroy your own economy. And Japan said, sure. I mean, we work for you. What else would we do? And their economy was crapped out, right? Never really recovered. And it was really flying at that time, right? And the same thing they're doing to the Europeans right now, right? They're saying to the Europeans, hey, man, destroy your economy. And the European leaders are saying, oh, why wouldn't we do that, right? South Korea, et cetera. Canada. These are countries that do not have independence or sovereignty. So the U.S. rules over them and tells them what to do. So when I talk about the U.S. empire, those are the countries that I'm talking about, the countries that the U.S. has direct rule over, that don't even have a hint of sovereignty, right? So one of the things that happened during the Ukraine conflict is this, keeping in mind, The Ukraine conflict is not solely about Russia. The Ukraine conflict is about the US empire seeing its unipolar moment when Russia, China, et al. Were weaker and the United States could dominate the globe, seeing that dissipate, seeing the rise um, great powers, Russia and China, of regional powers, Iran, Brazil, Venezuela, et cetera, Saudi Arabia. So regional powers are growing. All of these things the U.S. sees as a threat to its hegemony, its world control, particularly its economic infrastructure that controls the world, the IMF, the World Bank, things of that nature. So it sees this. It sees African countries saying, we're tired of being screwed over by you. We'll make a deal with Russia and China. And the U.S. says, we got to take them out. We got to take them all down. They all got to go. And we're going to start with, see, Russia's the starting point. We've got to take Russia out first. Two reasons. Number one is that, they see Russia as China's weaker partner, which is a mistake. And number two, because the US government is full of a bunch of lunatics who just are racist and they hate Russia. If you look at Victoria Nuland, you look at these people and you look at their histories, you look at their background. They're from Eastern European countries and they're damn fascists. They're from countries with a history of fascism. They're countries with a damn present of fascism. What I'm talking about, history, a present of fascism, right? So they hate Russia as a historical racial entity, and so they would start with Russia because that's who they hate the worst, and they would say we started with Russia because we got to work our way up to China. Could have something to do with it. So they decide we're going to go in. We got to go to war with the world. We got to knock the world back down to size. The unipolar moment is fading, and we're going to bring it back to life. We're going to breathe life into the unipolar moment. And how can we possibly do that? We can do that by wiping out and impoverishing the countries that are growing world powers. We want everybody to be weak and poor except us. Boy, that doesn't sound like if that don't sound like fascism, I don't know what does. So they decide we're going to make our move on Russia. Well, the problem they have is this, and this is, see, I'm going to tell you, the whole Ukraine conflict, the whole anti-China conflict and all this kind of crap, and it manifests itself in Russia. Here is the foundational problem that the US empire has. They are doing this for one reason, right? The Ukraine conflict is about knocking Russia down to size. It's about regime change in Russia. And then it is about taking over Russia and stealing all of its resources, right? It's about looking at Russia and saying, boy, they got a lot of good stuff there. If we could just get rid of their government that wants to look out for the people of Russia, if we could just wipe them out, get them gone, and then we could just steal all the stuff that Russia has. We could take all of their stuff. They got lots of goodies, oh boy. And we also have to be very, very concerned because Russia has the ability to empower our vassals in Europe. Russia has the ability to provide them with inexpensive energy. They can then build up their economies to the point where they don't have to listen to us anymore, and they're going to get froggy and they're doing that. We ain't listening to you. You can't tell us what to do. So they had to take Russia out so that they could keep their vassals in Europe in line and they could nab all the natural resources. One of the things that China needs is natural resources for its economic engine. If they were to get their mitts on Russia's natural resources, they could shut down the natural resources going to China. They could control, then, now add this, then they could control the markets worldwide. If these monsters, if Jake Sullivan and Biden and these people were to get their mitts on Russia's resources, oil, gas, etc., you know what they would do? They would jack the price up worldwide. They would impoverish everybody, and they would fill their stinking, filthy pockets. So that's what was the plan, right? Start with Russia first. Get your mitts on all the natural resources. Get a mega maniacal grip on the world's natural resources, and voila, China's going down. We're going to impoverish China. The people of China are going to go back into poverty. One point, the Chinese took 800 million people out of poverty. The neoliberals monsters are planning on putting all 800 million in people and everybody else that they can get their mitts on back into poverty. This is about power. Neoliberalism is really about power and control first and foremost. Okay, so they go to do this, but let's get to their problem. Huge problem. Their problem is this. they can't tell people what they're doing. They've got this worldwide plan and they have to lie about it. Their plan is so evil. Their plan is not aligned with international law or any morals and ethics of any human being. Anyone who looks at the plan of the neocons in the United States is going to say, damn, that's pretty freaking evil. Well, who the hell? Why would you do that? So they're trapped. Because now in Ukraine, look, think about this, where we are. And this is, I'm getting to why this exposes fascism, how this exposes fascism. It is that they are caught between the reality of what they're trying to do and the lies they have to tell about it so they can redirect people and pretend to be doing this for a good reason. Remember, these people have to always say we're doing things for human rights and democracy and all of that, right? So they're trapped between the reality that their plan is for world domination and hegemony and the reality that they have to lie and say they're doing it for good and fluffy reasons. We're helping out the people of color and the gays and we're helping out for democracy and the little people. That's who we're standing for, those poor people that are getting bombed. Well, we got to stand up for them, right? The problem is this: they have a history. The United States has a history. So people look at them, and the present. So people look at them and they say, look, you got a problem. You're telling us you're doing this for a good reason, right? That you're about independence and sovereignty. Yes. Democracy. Yeah. Why are you currently occupying a third of Libya? What about their independence and democracy? So they have things that they're doing right now that exposes that the contradictions of what they're doing, that exposes their lies. So along comes independent journalism, Jimmy Dore, Garland Nixon, the Gray Zone, whoever the hell, right? Vanessa Bailey, you name it, right? Along comes independent journalism. Along comes alternative media. And alternative media says, hey, look, there's a contradiction here. You're telling us you want to do this here, but you're doing that. We start pointing out the contradictions. We start pointing out the immoral and unethical nature of the neocons' plans. And we start saying, you're lying. Come on, you think we're stupid? You're lying. This is not why so we start explaining the real reason that they're doing things, and they're trapped. They can't have that. What happens if the entire world, first of all, start with the American people. Start with the American people. What happens if the American people, if the British people, if all the Europeans know the truth about what their leaders are executing? What happens if the people of Europe know that they're being made to suffer, that they're being economically wiped out, and they're doing it for evil reasons? See, remember, part of neoliberalism is this: it takes advantage. It's a con game, but it takes advantage of the fact that its citizens want to believe that they're the good guys, right? The citizens, you got to believe that we're the good guys when they ain't. They ain't the good guys, but their citizens have to believe that. So as they start to struggle with the reality that more and more of their citizens are learning the truth, they have to suppress those citizens. Out comes your fascism. I want you to think about this. And there's one other part to it. Let me add this before I go there. And the reality of neoliberal economics. Neoliberal economics works to extract money from the working class and the poor and give it to the millionaires and the billionaires and the oligarchs, right? It works. What it actually does, people say neoliberalism doesn't work. It works very well. It works to extract money from the little guy, give that money to the rich guy, right? It works well to do that. And you've got two things going on. You've got alternative media, which are saying to people, here's the truth, and people are starting to learn the truth and push back and making it very difficult to deny the truth. That's problematic. You got people online who want to have a discussion about that, people who want to talk about that. That's problematic. They can't have that because if people learn what they're doing, it all falls apart. And you have the reality of neoliberal economics, which the results are going to be always the same. The little guy hurts worse and worse and worse, and the big guy gets richer and richer and richer, and people are unhappy with that. And you need fascism. See, what is the job of a government? What expectations do people have of their government, right? It's a place where they can seek redress for their grievances. It's a place that looks out for the common good and the common welfare. That's the expectations that people have. Neoliberalism says basically this: The government's terrible, horrible, and evil and can do nothing but good. Therefore, what we want to do is we want to take power from the government and we put it in the hands of private interests. We're going to take government, make government weaker. We're going to take that power and we're going to put it in the hands of these powerful corporations and wealthy people, et cetera. And it will work out better for you. If the government is weaker and these corporations and the oligarchs are stronger, it'll work out better for you. But the truth is, people are feeling the pain because the whole thing's a fraud. It's a self-serving racket. So they have two things going on at the same time: alternative media, people like us who are starting to wake up, and they have the pain that is being felt by the reality of neoliberal economics. So what happens now? Let's go backwards. What was the first big experiment of neoliberalism? A lot of people know this. Some of you might not. It was the early 70s in Chile, right? That was the first big experiment. They overthrew the government of Salvador Allende, and they installed Pinochet, who was a fascist leader. And when they put Pinochet in power, it was a brutal fascist dictatorship. And what did they do? That's where they started. They're like, this is it, man. This is the incubator. We're going to start neoliberal policies here and spread it from here. And that was their test, right? We're going to take all the power from the government. We're going to give all the power to the corporations and to the super wealthy people. And that's going to work out fine. And it didn't really work out fine because it's not really intended to work out fine. It's intended to move it's basically a self-serving racket. But in order to do it, you think about this. If you think about this, what did they do? Did they say, we're going to bring in a democracy? We're going to let the people vote. We're going to let the people choose their government. We're going to know. They did the opposite. They overthrew a democracy and installed a fascist dictator, because in order to execute policies like this, you can't do it if there's a democracy, because people aren't going to like it, because it's not going to work out in favor of the masses. So they had to install a fascist dictator, Pinochet, and voila, they did it. And of course, it turned into a hell of a mess. So what I'm saying is this: in order to initially install it, a program where you're going to come in and you're going to say, we're going to cut pensions for people, we're going to cut government benefits for people, we're going to tax you higher, we're going to raise the price of fuel, we're going to make everything private, so you pay more for everything, and all that money goes into the hands of corporations, and you don't have any say whatsoever. You got no say in it, and that's going to work out better for you in the long run. That's what they told them. But in order to execute it, the people would have never said they were okay with that, because that's not what most people want. But people don't trust most people. We got some poor schmucks, unfortunately, but most people don't trust the oligarchs. And they hadn't had a chance to brainwash people. So they needed fascism. So the bookends of neoliberalism at the beginning, at the entrance of the neoliberal policies, what they had was that they had to have a fascist dictator in order to institute this, because average people would have said, no thanks, we don't want our benefits cut, and we don't want to pay more for taxes, and blah blah blah. It makes our lives miserable, which is obvious. There was a fascist dictator. Fascism was at the beginning of neoliberalism. Now, what we can argue, and what I'm going to argue, is neoliberalism is dying. It's on its last breath. In that, when I say it's dying, people might say, "Oh, well, they're not giving up. They ain't giving up that easy." I'm not saying they're giving up that easy. I'm saying, look what's happening to the banks. Look what's happened after 2008. They started a self-serving racket, and it was nothing but a racket, and it's crumbling. Forget what they want or what they don't want. The neoliberal economic system is falling apart. It's being held together with bubble gum and duct tape. The U.S. is $33 trillion in debt. The service payment on the debt in the last 3 or 4 years has gone from 600 billion to 900 billion. It's going to keep rising. What happens when just the service on our debt is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trillion. What happens when just to pay the service on the debt, the United States is paying more for the service on the debt than it could possibly even pay to keep its 800 bases around the world open, because they don't spend anything on people. Forget that. What happens? It's crumbling. They can't continue on this pace. It's going to fall apart. And the other thing is this: neoliberalism lives off of debt. The corporations are up to their ears in debt. The government is up to their ears in debt. The people are up to their ears in debt. I mean, they even got to the point where they got college students. Go to college. What happens when I get out? You're up to your ears in debt, just like your parents. And so what's happening is this debt is snowballing bigger and bigger and bigger. So neoliberalism is crumbling. It's crashing. The students are waking up saying, why the hell am I in debt? I just got out of college and I owe $200,000 in debt. This ain't good. So as it crashes, what's on the other end of it? What was on the beginning of it? Fascism. You had to have fascism to convince people that the government was going to do things that they weren't going to like, that wasn't going to work out for them. So you could just smash them into the ground if they didn't like it. If they said it wasn't a good idea, you'd kill them. That's what you did under Pinochet. So what's happening now? Now we've gotten to the other end of it. In order to institute these policies that people didn't want, you needed fascism. Now that the system is crumbling, in order to hold on to these policies that people don't want, you got to have fascism. It's the same thing. You have to have governments that say to people, you cannot have democracy. Now, don't get me wrong. They've had a lot of time to brainwash people. They brainwashed conservatives first. They brainwashed brainwashed the Republicans. They brainwashed the Democrats. Right? The Republicans and Democrats in the United States, the two predominant parties, are brainwashed as hell neoliberal parties to a point where it's sickening. And they have no clue. You know what the interesting thing about propaganda is? Propaganda really works when somebody believes something and they think it was their idea, right? You have now people who believe that it's in the best. This is what they think. It's an American way of thinking. This is how they've got neoliberalism and conservatives in America. They believe this to their heart, that if you make the government weaker and make corporations stronger, we'll all be better off. But they think they don't like neoliberalism. That's kind of the foundation of neoliberalism. So we've got a conservative party that's fundamentally neoliberal. At its core, the Republican Party is fundamentally neoliberal. It pushes neoliberalism. It says, hey, what we got to do is make the government smaller and weaker, and make corporations, and give all the power to corporations and to these of the oligarchs and bankers on Wall Street. Give them all the power, and magically, we're not sure how. It's just the way it works. Why it didn't work this way in the past and it really hasn't now, we don't know. But magically, some kind of way, it makes everything better. If just the government. Now, I understand people who don't trust governments fundamentally, but if you live in the United States, trust the government would be a fool. Neoliberal governments. But to say that there's no chance that any government could ever be better than any corporation, so we should give all the power to the corporations, benefits who? The people who own the corporations. And we have done that, and we are doing that. And here's my question: how's it working? How's it working? You see, let's just say this for one, and see the other part of it is this: that neoliberalism being a form of fascism, you don't have the ability to influence your government. You don't have democracy. In a democracy, right? In a democracy, you can petition. I could go to members of Congress and I could say, I don't like what's going on as far as medical coverage or whatever. I don't like this, or I do like this, and I can influence members of Congress. And then all of the people could get together and we could say to our members of Congress, we want X, and then ideally we get X, because then if it's a democracy, they represent us. In neoliberalism, they don't represent us. They represent the oligarchs. So no matter how much we go to them and we ask them for whatever we want, we ain't getting it. No possibility that we'll get it. The power has been taken from us and given to the corporations. Now the corporations have all the money, all the power, and we say to the government what we want, and they just laugh at us. And then they go to the people who we have all given the power to, and they ask them, and the corporations say, I want you to do whatever it takes to make me more money and to get me more power and to get me more influence. That's what you'll do. I don't give a damn about those people. So the government doesn't stand for us anymore. So now what you have is, initially, In Chile, you had a government that was enacting policies that were not in the best interest of people, so they needed fascism. Now you have a government who's trying to hold on to policies that are not only are not in the best interest of people, but are time proven not to be in the best interest of the masses, and to be highly detrimental to the best interest of the masses. And people can see it. All they got to do is walk outside and drive around, and you see the United States is falling apart. It's crumbling. I get on the train every day, and I go to Washington, D.C., and they go pull in a Union Station, the big train station in Washington, D.C., and it is an ungodly mess. Where you pull in, I look, and they got these rusty old lights hanging over. They look like they were built in the 40s. I would say 30s, 40s, maybe older. Literally, these things are probably 100 years old. And this is what the main train station in Washington, D.C. looks like. Why is that? Because neoliberalism doesn't believe that the government should have any money, and that the government should spend money on train stations and things like this. And if you are a corporation, it don't make you no money to spend to make the train stations look nicer, or to fix them up, or to update them. Doesn't make you more money if you're a corporation, so you don't want to do it. There's no point in it. There's no profit in that. And so now that all of the powers move to the corporations, they only do what makes them a profit. And we saw during COVID what happened. The COVID was about profit. Even then, even when, from the looks of things, some one way or another, a biological agent got out of a lab, according to the government. Now they're finally admitting that a biological agent got out of a lab. But when that happened and posed a threat to people, we could certainly discuss how much of a threat and all the other things that the government did. But one thing we got to say about it, the first and most important thing that the government did was to address the economic health of the major corporations. They started with the CARES Act. And what was the CARES Act was, in the United States, a few crumbs for the people, and trillions of dollars. Basically, what they said was, oh my gosh, we're shutting everything down and corporations might suffer, so let's give them lots of money. They gave Boeing like $15 billion, and Boeing didn't even ask for it and didn't even need it. They just handed money out to the corporations. And people were like, I don't have any food. They were like, screw you, you're locked down, stay in. You might give somebody a bug, get out of here. Just maintain your 6 feet apart, wear your mask, whatever. No, at first it was no mask, then it was a mask. Do whatever, do what you're told, and suffer it through, because we got to give all the money to these rich folks. That's what the government's. And what did they do after 2008? Hey, we're suffering, we're losing our homes. Well, look, tough it out, buddy. We got to bail out these banks. The answer to everything is to give money to the wealthy. And we are at a point where people are, it's not that they're really waking up. It's that they can't help but feel the pain. And they can't help but see the results everywhere. And so as a result, the United States government is realizing that its grip on power, the IMF and the World Bank, et cetera, around the world, the economic structures that it created to oppress Africa and Latin America, to keep Europe in line, et cetera, that these economic institutional structures around the world, this infrastructure, is not adequate anymore. Because China and Russia and other countries have money and they've got resources, and they're independent, and they're not going to do what they're told to do, which is means the death of neoliberalism. Because here's the problem you got. You're going to have to try to convince your people, look, we should do this, man. It's in our best interest. But right now, look at Europe. Europe's a friggin' mess, falling apart. Rules, everything's going through the roof. Winter's coming. They're going to struggle with issues of heat and energy, and the governments don't even give a damn. And look at China and Russia. If you look at Europe, it's in bad damn shape. And I know lots of people who go to Russia. I talk to people all the time, and you know what they say? Man, you go to Europe, things are very expensive, and things are kind of tough. You go to Russia, you're not dealing with that. Russia just seems to have had minimal impact on the daily lives of people. Granted, there are a lot of people on the front. There are a lot of people going to war in the war, and they have to deal with that. They're not happy about it, and it's very dangerous. But when you look at the day-to-day lives of the people in Moscow, as opposed to the day-to-day lives of the people in London, the people in Moscow aren't facing the same economic struggles. And Europe is going to turn into a damn deserted wasteland, just like the United States is turning into. I mean, you go into the mainstream cities now, the violence and the what we call what I call crimes of despair. You know, people are stealing from the markets. They're stealing baby food. Who steals baby food? People who have babies and can't afford to feed them. Right? Oh, these terrible people running through these markets and running through these stores and stealing things. Why are they doing that? They're doing that. These are crimes of despair and desperation. These are people who have no hope. They weren't doing it 10 years ago, were they? They weren't doing it 15 years ago. What do you think? They suddenly woke up and turned bad? These are crimes of despair, crimes of desperation, anger, frustration. And they're looking at their leaders. Look at Joe Biden. Guy's crooked as a barrel of fish hooks. They're looking at their leaders. They're looking at the banks, and they're saying these people are doing everything crooked that they can to steal every dime they can. And they're as corrupt as hell as can be. And they're not following any laws, and nobody's doing anything. Why should I? It's natural. That's what people do. When they look at their leaders and they see that their leaders aren't following the law, people start thinking to themselves, why the hell should I follow the law? I'm going to be the one that follows the law, and these bastards are going to steal everything they can and ain't going to follow the law. It is the nature of humans to do that. So there is pushback internally. You see, as the neoliberal fascist leaders, as they face the external threat, as they see it, of growing nations, of growing world powers, as they face that, right? Their biggest fear is not that. The biggest fear of the Tony Blinkens and the Sullivans and all of these neoliberals is not actually, this is the secondary fear. It's not Russia and China and Iran. Their numero uno fear is internal uprisings. That's why fascism is revisiting us in the form of neoliberal oppression. You look through COVID and what happened. Do what I tell you. And if you don't, I will never forget an article that I read in the Washington Post. I saw this article in the Washington Post. It was during when the jab first came out. And a lot of people were saying, nah. Some people saying yes. Some people say no. I mean, that's just the way a society is going to work, right? And what they said was, we've used the carrot enough. It's time for the stick. That stuck in my mind, because what they're saying is this, that we have asked people in America and asked them to do what we want them to do, and they said no. And now we will use coercion against our own people. That shows that you believe that you have a right, that you have the authority to use coercion against your own people. So now the war on terror is now a war on terrorism at home. So now they started using terms. They're domestic terrorism, right? All they were saying was this: these tools that we've been using to oppress people around the world, as a fascist government, our biggest fear of the fascist government is internal uprisings. So these tools that we've been using to stop external uprisings, now we got to bring them home. Why? After 2008, man, the people were no longer happy. A lot of people woke up and said, why the hell is it that you're bailing out Wall Street and you do nothing for me? Hey, we're starting to wake up. Something ain't right here, people. Then in 2008, everybody was supposed to say they wanted Hillary, and they went after old Bernie Sanders. We could say Bernie Sanders was a simp for the system, but he had a different message. They weren't happy about the fact that wasn't supposed to happen. Then people were leaving. We had, people leaving the parties. Along comes Trump. Look, the Republican Party doesn't want Trump. The Republican Party wants Mitch McConnell. It wants DeSantis. It wants people who are happy to be part of the system and who are simply say, let's continue this system as it is. You just need a different manager for the system. And along comes Trump, and Trump's a problem, because he's saying things that are unacceptable. You're not allowed to say, hey, let's question NATO. You're not allowed to say, I think Joe Biden was involved in corruption in Ukraine. You're not allowed to say that. Of course he's involved in corruption in Ukraine. He's a neoliberal. That's what neoliberals do. Corruption in Ukraine and any other damn country they can. And Trump, like a person who didn't know the neoliberal rules, said, hey, what about that over there? And they're like, you don't know the rules, idiot. people start asking questions. There's a rise. I saw a number somewhere between 50 to 70% of people under the age of 29 have a positive view of socialism. Well, why the hell wouldn't they? How's this? People are like, no, you've got to love capitalism. How's it worked out for them? You could have come up with any name. Hey, what about some other form of government? They'd have said any place is better than here. So now you've got people saying, hey, socialism might be an option. Anything. What they're really saying is any place is better than here. I'm looking for a new option. People like me say, look, you don't need names of capitalism and socialism. What you need to do is just a system that works. We don't need to name it. We just need a system. We need to figure out a system. We need to figure out what policies we need that work in the best interest of the masses and institute those policies. Why the hell do we have to give them a name? You know, and it's given a name so that the oligarch can convince people that they don't want it instead of working with us. So now you've got a system, and this is what you have internally and externally. I'm summing it up in the US empire. Here's the system. Externally, you have a system that is parasitic, right? They steal bananas and chocolate from Latin America and oil and gas from Latin America. They steal cobalt and uranium and copper from the Congo. They steal oil from Niger. Basically, they go around the world and they extract goods at a fraction of the actual market value. And they oppress and murder those who don't want to give up the goods. So you've got people in the world who don't like this system because it doesn't work for them and it works against them. It's not in their best interest, this system. So now the United government and the US government says, what, we'll attack you, we'll blow you up, we'll overthrow your country, we'll stick missiles around you, we'll surround you with bases, we'll threaten you, we'll do all kinds of terrible, evil things. And we'll just we'll lie to our people and tell them we're doing it because we like fluffy bunnies and human rights and trans rights or something like that, right? We're going to give them. So the people in the world are fed up. They've had it with having their natural resources extracted from the U.S. empire, the U.S. and its colonial vassals in the EU. But again, what is the biggest threat to neoliberalism and fascism? It's internal uprisings. So now they have to take the weapons that they have, the war, various tools that they use to overthrow governments, to influence elections, to cheat elections, all of those tools that they've been using around the world. They go to this country, we want your lithium. The country says no, they overthrow the government. They put in these NGOs, right? Non-governmental organizations, and they think tanks, and they go into that country and they open up newspapers and they open up websites and they try to influence and lie to the people. They do all of this stuff so they can overthrow this country, right? Well, now the people in these countries are unhappy. And so they're like, we don't like it, we're pushing back. Well, here's the problem. The people at home, they're experiencing the same thing. The people at home are like, man, this ain't working for me. Why is it that, I'm working 3 jobs and I still can't pay my bills and I don't have any savings and I have no future and I don't have much of a presence? People are asking those questions. At the same time, they're looking at the system. They're looking at alternative media and they're asking, why are you guys doing the things that you're doing? And I'm glad that whether it's Garland or Jimmy Dore, whoever the hell you like, I don't know, Viva Free, you name them. Why this, Caleb Moffat, whoever you like, you name it, I don't care. These people are asking questions. Some of them I don't even like, but some of them I do out there. But there is a robust conversation going on. Neoliberalism and fascism cannot afford a robust conversation. So neoliberalism has to go back to its fascist totalitarian roots of Chile's Pinochet and say, we got to knock down these voices inside of our empire. We cannot have people asking about the weapons of mass destruction that we alleged in Syria and Iraq. We can't have people bringing that back up. We can't have people pushing back, such as Julian Assange exposing us. We got to stop that. Oh my gosh, that's a problem. We got to go after Assange. We can't have people protesting in the streets. We got to go after protesters and charge them with RICO. Oh my gosh, people might like Trump and they might want Trump to win. And we've screwed things up so bad that there's a good possibility that Trump might win. Now, he's a member of one of these parties. I ain't voting for him. I don't like either one of the parties, but I'm just saying, I've said this many times, the attraction that a lot of people have to Donald Trump is they hate the system. They don't care who comes at the system as long as the person has an axe and they start swinging it. And they see Trump as the guy with an axe in his hand, walking in to this jewelry, into this a China shop of neoliberalism with an axe, and they hope he'll start swinging. And if anything else, if they don't get anything out of Trump, at least they'll get to piss off the ruling elite. They're happy that the ruling elite hates Trump. And there's a lot of people that are like, well, good, I'll vote for him. Let's not forget, you can go to Michigan. 31 counties that voted for Obama in Michigan flipped to Trump. So what are they? Racist? They hate, oh my gosh, they hate all minorities. Well, they voted for Obama. I'm not saying they aren't racist, but I'm saying they were willing to vote for Obama because they wanted something different. And when they didn't get that and Trump came in, they wanted something different. And they said, we're going to vote for Trump now. So what you have is you have a Republican Party who's brainwashed to believe the foundation of neoliberalism. You got to take all the energy from the government, all the power from the government, and give it to the private corporations, right? But you have a Democratic Party who's brainwashed, and they're brainwashed to believe that the government has to protect them from fascism, that Trump and the Republicans or whoever they name are fascists, and that the government, Putin, Smootin, Rootin, Tootin, whoever the hell, whatever, that they're trained to be sheep. And that COVID, whatever, right? What they're trained is that the government is here to protect you from fill in the blank. It's going to protect you from COVID. How's it going to protect me from COVID? Well, it's going to tell you to stay social distance. It's going to provide a jab for you. It's going to do all of those things. So, because in their mind, they believe the government's here to protect them from evil, they're going to not question the government. And those of us who do are right-wing crazy fanatics, and especially those of us on the left, the far lefties like me. We're the worst kind of, white supremacists and right-wing fanatics, the kind that are on the left. That's the worst kind, right? But they don't care, because from their perspective, look, the government's here to protect me. Why those people wouldn't take the jab, and those people won't listen when they're told what to do, and they want to support Trump. The government's has told me that Trump is evil and he must be stopped. And I trust that the government's here looking out for my best interest. So, yay, government, go get Trump. Go stop him from doing terrible things. He's horrible. He's evil. How do you know that? Because the government told me he was. So I know he has to be. I ain't saying Trump is good. He means nothing to me. Trump's part of the system. I'm just saying that you've got a Republican Party who's awash with neoliberalism as far as its foundational economic policies they support 100%. You've got a Democratic Party who are realistically, they're willing to overlook the fact that their leaders are pushing the same exact economic policies that the Republicans are pushing. They're just claiming they're not. All they're doing is claiming we're doing something good for the poor. What are you doing? The same damn things as Republicans. So what are you kidding me? We're starting a new war. That'll help them. Hey, a great war, right? So now they've got their mind is melded with these fascists, and they believe that the fascists have to protect them from the other fascists. And how do they do that? Using fascism. How are you going to do that? How are you going to protect us? Well, we need censorship. There was a time, there was Glenn Greenwald had shared this poll, and it was Democrats and Republicans. And it was like during COVID, and the Democrats were like 60%. I mean, these astronomical numbers. Thought people who wouldn't get the job should be locked up, should be people who were talking online about things that they didn't think they should be talking about regarding COVID should be suppressed, censored, jailed, you name it, right? Put in concentration camps. And they were all like, yeah, that's a great idea. That's good. Why is that? Because they have been brainwashed to believe that a neoliberal government is not only acting on their behalf, but its job is to protect them from the evil fascists and conspiracy theorists and whoever they're told. See, if you believe that this neoliberal government's looking out for you, then whoever it tells you is your enemies, it says, look, Garland's my enemy. Why? Shut up. You're not supposed to ask that question. Garland is your enemy. Okay, Garland's my enemy, and therefore I need to do terrible things to Garland. Well, by all means, I know you must, because he's your enemy. I need to censor him and shut him up. No, yeah, I need to charge him with RICO crimes. I need to do all kinds of terrible things to Garland because I've convinced you that he's your enemy. He's my enemy. and he's your enemy. And therefore, we got to go after him. And so the Democrats are like, yes, go after him, because they trust that the government is looking out for their best interest, and that it really needs to go after Garland. And so they just cheer when it goes after Garland, and when it censors and it does all the things that it tells them it needs to do. And it's in trouble. This government is in deep and serious trouble. They have done so much dirt, and so much of it has been exposed by alternative media, that they cannot possibly afford to allow someone to come to power in the United States that would be even begin to be an honest broker in some areas. They can't afford a person who would say, look, I really think that the FBI should be an honest police department, law enforcement agency. I don't think that it should be the government secret police. That's what it is. The FBI is the equivalent. If you have a fascist regime, it has to have a secret police. It has to have a police force that goes out and that smites its enemies and shuts people down that are saying things that's what the FBI's job is. Look, during COVID, what was the FBI doing? It was on the phone with Twitter every other day. Here's a new batch of Twitter accounts you need to shut down. Oh, here's some tweets you need to censor. Its job was the government secret police. The Biden administration used the FBI, and now what's happening with the DOJ? The DOJ is going after Trump. It is the secret police. They're like basically the government basically says, look, we can't afford to have Trump be president again. He might not listen. He might do things that we don't like. So cook up some charges and take him out. Now, because they have convinced the Democratic Party that this neoliberal government is going to protect them from fascism. When it says we got to go after Trump because he's a fascist, the Democratic Party says, hooray, I trust you and I believe that you're doing the right thing. Now, the problem is the Republicans are just as brainwashed. And if their people take power and they say we're going after X group, then the Republicans will be cheering and saying, yay, you got to go after them. They're socialist or communist or whatever the hell we don't like. Because all the Republican leadership has to say is we're going after Garland. Why? He's a socialist communist. He is? Take him out. And they'll just make a list. And there's a whole bunch of people that we hate because they don't agree with our policies. Okay, yeah. And here's a list of them. They're all communists. And the Republican parties will just cheer. The Democratic Party, all they got to name them as, I don't know, jab hesitant or, conspiracy theorist, QAnon, whatever the hell, right? All they got to do is give them the name, and then all of the Democrats will jump on board and say, yes, take them out. Do a good job. Protect us from those people. And then, of course, the Republican Party, all they got to say is those people are a bunch of communists. Garland's a communist. He's a communist. That guy's a communist. Everybody that we hate is a communist. And the Republican Party, the rank and file Republicans will say, thank you. I believe, just as the Democrats do, that the government is going to protect me from fascism. The government is going to protect me from these communists. Go forward. Both of them believe the same thing. The government gives them a list of enemies and then says, I'm protecting you from those enemies. But I got to use some pretty damn fascist and dominant totalitarian methods to go after them. And whichever group says, yeah, go right ahead. Not recognizing that at some point that fascism is going to make a U-turn and kick them right in the ass when the other group gets in power. So they keep bumping back and forth. The Democrats are in power. They use fascism. They're going after the Republicans. When the Republicans take power, they'll use fascism. They'll go after the Democrats. Both of them are going to do the same thing. They're going to go after the working class. They're going to go after the schmucks like us who are saying, hey, man, something ain't right here. Oh, exactly. That's just what a threat to the system would say, isn't it? You must work for the Russians, Chinese, Iranians, and communists, and Nicaraguans, Cubans, too. You work for all of them. You son of a bitch. We got to get him. Kill the monster. The monster must die. And then all you back people who are supporting you say, God, I'm sure happy that the government is here to protect me from the group that the government told me that they have to protect me from. Oh, yeah. How's your economic situation? Oh, man, it's just as bad. Hey, are they doing anything to deal with infrastructure? Certainly not. What about foreign policy? They're starting wars everywhere, building new bases. Really? But you think they're looking out for you and protecting you from fascism? Fascism is a must now. It's what you have to do when the people say, this doesn't work for me. The system doesn't work for me. What you're doing is not working for me. and you're not going to change the system, you must then oppress the people. You must then take the tools that you're using to oppress the people and steal their bananas and cocoa and blah, 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 and uranium and gold and cobalt and lithium. You must take those tools now, turn them internally and say, um, we got to knock down these crazy conspiracy theorists, and then everything will be all right. If we can just take out those people who are enemies, and sooner or later you learn that all of us are their enemies. Please interview Dave Smith. Now, if that ain't Dave Smith, if that is not like the most generic name I've ever heard in my life, I'm not going to say, I would like to say I don't know Dave Smith, but I'm sure I do. I bet you right now, if I look around, I probably in my life have known 500 Dave Smiths, names like in the US, Dave Smith, Bill Jones, Thomas, Thomas, names like that, Fred Thomas. So interview Dave Smith. That won't be hard. If there were still, phone booths, phone books, I could open a phone book and it'd be, the Dave Smiths would be this thick. David Smith, David Allen Smith, David William Smith, David Franklin Smith. There'd be a million Dave Smiths. So I would interview Dave Smith, but I'm sure there's about 100 million thousand Dave Smiths, and I doubt very seriously if I ever figure out exactly which Dave Smith you're talking about. But feel free to let me know if you can. Email me, whatever, and let me know who the hell Dave Smith is, and I'll consider emailing him. I get stuff like that from people all the time. Hey, email this guy, and I'm like, I don't know who he is. But hey, I'm sure he's great. So somebody let me know. Dave Smith, don't approach me. Who the hell is Dave Smith? Everybody knows who Dave Smith is. One guy's like, interview Dave Smith. People are like, well, I don't know about Dave Smith. He doesn't impress me. Other people are like, yeah, Dave Smith is great. And I'm like, who the hell is Dave Smith? Yeah, I think it's, you know what? I'm starting to think there's really no such person as Dave Smith, other than the million Dave Smiths that live in the US that all have that same name. But that, like, people in the chat are just screwing with me, that they're just like, hey, let's make up a name. Hey, what do you want to say to Garland today? Let's go with interview Tom Smithson. Hey, Garland, interview Tom Smithson. And then like people will all be in the chat saying it, and I'll be like, who the hell's Tom Smithson? Yeah, we knew you were an idiot, Garland. You don't know who anybody is. So, okay, Dave Smith, John Smith, exactly. Sam Smith of the Body Shop. Yeah, Smith. That's a hard name to track down. At any rate, so there we are. Right? I guess this is the foundation of what this has been about. Chile, Salvador Allende, he's dead, and in comes Pinochet. Fascism. You have to use fascism to institute neoliberalism. And as neoliberalism starts to unravel and the plight of the working class gets worse and worse and worse, you now have to institute fascism to try to hold it together, to try to keep it from going. The fascism is about this. This is what fascism is about. The people in the country don't like what they're getting, and you still plan to give it to them. And now fascism is about the government finding a way for minority rule. A small group of oligarchs want to rule the majority. It's minority rule, and minority rule like that ultimately has to go to some level of fascism. It has to go to some level of totalitarianism. It has to go to some level of oppression. And it has to be this: we're the good guys. Our government is the good guys, and they're on a good mission. In fact, our government is on a mission in the universe to institute the policies of good. Why we've got to go around the world. Why? Because some LGBTQ people in Afghanistan may be oppressed. Some trans people may be oppressed in this part of the world. Some Black or indigenous people of color in this part of the world may be oppressed. We've got to name the groups of people that could be oppressed, because we might have to go to some part of the world that has lithium and copper and gold and uranium and stop that oppression. You ever notice, why is it oppression always seems to have to raise its ugly head in the same places where there's lots of resources that the oligarchs want? Why is it that oppression is never in just like a bland old desert where there's nothing they really want but sand? There's no oppression there. We never have to move in to save the Bedouins from sand. It's we got to go to, I don't know, some country in Africa that conveniently happens to have a lot of uranium. We got to go to the French. We got to go to Niger, and we've got to save those people from a coup. Really? What do they got in Niger? Yeah, they got gold, uranium things. We need a lot of uranium, so we better look out for the people in Niger. They need some. They need to be freed from this coup. There we go. And so now they're looking into and the U.S.'s empire is doing it at home. The Europe just passed some big rule where they're going to try to oppress people online. You can't say things that the government doesn't want you to say. I mean, and think about the EU. It's not elected. You've got an unelected group of people in Europe now saying we're going to tell people what they can and can't say. That doesn't get any further. You get no further from democracy than that. To have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats telling people what they can and can't say online. You can't get a whole hell of a lot further from democracy than that. But that it was inevitable. Inevitable. It had to happen. All right, let's look. We got some people. We got some super chats, and we're going to see. Usually our super chats are brilliant. As long as nobody asks me to interview Dave Smith, because I don't know who the hell that is. Okay, Sparky, what's up with Vivek appearing in a town hall along with Buttigieg as a random questioner several presidential elections ago? Is Vivek an establishment groom stooge? Saw the clip on Lovely Savvy Sabs. Yeah, I kind of think he is. Look, you think the system is mad with a guy who wants our war with China? We must stop what's going on with Russia. Why? We got to stop this war. I mean, this is the way it goes. We got to stop this war. Why? So we can start the war over here. The system ain't going to be mad with a guy who wants to stop the war here so he can go to the war over there. He's a neoliberal monster. Vivek Baraswamy. We got to stop this war. Why? We got other more important wars. Yeah, you think the system hates that? Garland, who exactly do we owe all this debt to? Ourselves, the Federal Reserve, China? Who will be holding the bag if we blow off the debt? The bottom line is this. We owe all of this debt to the oligarchs. And that's the perfect question. The banks, right? The banks, the oligarchs, they're the ones. Think about it. Who are the student loans being paid to? The banks. We live in a system where corporations live off of loans and debt and things of that nature. And so the bottom line is we owe all the debts to these wealthy, stinking people. And if we stop paying, that's who will be left holding the bag. And they can't let that happen. So they've got to use fascistic policies. All right, let's see what we got next. The most disturbing thing about Bud Light is not a weirdo endorsing of it. Finding out that InBev AB has gobbled up half the world's beer brands. Governments need to do some trust. Trust busting. Oh yeah, but they don't. They no longer do that. But here's the interesting thing too. The people who are in charge. Look, and the people in charge of Bud Light are former CIA. What the hell? Are former CIA people running beer freaking companies? Because they're running all of it, not just the beer companies. All right. How about we see what Sparky has to say? Make Ukraine Russia again. Well, we got some more. Roberto Nunez, Mexican president, is at Chile right now commemorating the death of Allende. Allende was a good president. Yes, he was. That's why he had to go. Build a better world with bricks, says Sparky. Let's keep going. Pro 86 says, please comment on 2034 and the fourth turning has arrived. I don't know. I have no idea what that is. So I guess I won't be I'll be talking about that with Dave Smith, whoever that is. I'll call Dave Smith and ask him. Pro 86, whether How on as well as Ron Paul. Okay, a couple of things. There will be peace eventually in Ukraine, just not right away. I think what happens is, look what happened to Chechnya. Eventually, it was run by Russia. I think at some point, the neoliberals will get disinterested and they will do what they do when things fall apart. They'll walk away from it. And one of the things I think that's happening right now is that two things, and it's unfortunate for Ukraine. From the perspective of the neocons, if in fact Ukraine is going back to Russia at some point, they want it bashed to hell so it's as broken up as possible. Number one. Number two, from the Russians' perspective, if the neocons are never going to leave Ukraine, then they wanted to bash it to hell, and so they don't have much to work with. So from the perspective of Ukraine, all sides, on the long run, it benefits them to turn Ukraine into a smoking pile of ashes. So it's going to get bashed to hell. And the United States put crazy lunatics that are every bit as fascistic as the Biden administration in charge, namely these Azov battalion fascists, So they ain't gonna give up easy. They're gonna stand there until this thing falls and turns into a pile of trash. So I do think that the Ukrainian project is going to collapse. That it will end in economic, political, and military collapse. Pro 86 says, "Are you suing X?" Yes, I am. Not yet. I haven't filed my suit yet, but yes, yes, yes. Sparky says, some people ridicule Jackson Hinkle for being a communist, but at 23 years old, his whole life he's seen communist China standards of living rise while crony capitalism U.S. becomes a hot mess. Well, look, here's the bottom line. I think people should pursue any ideology that they feel works best for them. I'll say this: most Americans that hate communism don't even know what the hell it is. At least before you hate it, you need to know what the hell it is and some history about it. So if Jackson Hinkle wants to be a damn communist, that's what he should be. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, part of this thing in America, where America thinks, the Americans think they have a right to tell everyone else what kind of ideology they should have in their country. And then the U.S. has the nerve to say, well, communists or socialists kill people. There ain't nobody in the world that kills more people than neoliberal capitalism. Right now, the whole world is afraid that it's going to die in a nuclear holocaust of neoliberal capitalism, and they have the nerve to say they're scared of communism. Pro 86, interview Dave Smith, please. I got you covered. I got Dave Smith. I got him covered. I'm going for Dave Smith. Whoever the hell Dave Smith is. He is my man. Me and Dave Smith are going to rap, man. We got things to talk about, bro. Raphael says, gee, do you really think that the White House truly believed that Vietnam will go to war with China for us? So Vietnam believed U.S. was defending them during the war? No. But let me say this. So I just said no. Okay. These people are idiots. I mean, these are the people that thought that Russia was going to fall apart of the sanctions. These are the people that they thought a couple of weeks in, Russia would fall apart, Putin would be overthrown. So what neocons believe should not be discussed in the realm of rationality. They're not rational people. These, you were talking about Tony Blinken, the goddamn man, excuse my language. This guy, but Tony Blinken just makes me say this. He's an idiot. He is a psychopath. He is a psychopathic idiot. And the idea that we should concern ourselves with what Tony Blinken believes, Tony Blinken, psychopathic idiots believe psychopathic lunacy and idiocy. That's what these people believe. So, Raphael, the idea that they would believe that Vietnam, which is, last time I checked, is run by the Communist Party of Vietnam, would join these lunatics, knowing that as soon as they got finished, well, look, first of all they want to do is turn Vietnam into Ukraine anyway, sacrifice it and turn it into a pile of rubble. So the idea that they would believe, sure, they believe that everybody's going to stand up for them because they're the smart guys. They're insane. Even Rolling Rock is now owned by InBev AB. No, my God, not Rolling Rock. For God's sake, that's ice water, isn't it? Ice water with a little bit of yellow food coloring in it. Donald Sneed says, who is responsible for Schultz's new pirate look? Well, they might as well. He might as well look like a pirate. Well, because what Schultz is now is, he is the results of what a pirate does. He's been had by a pirate. They've taken his loot. He's allowed them to loot his entire country. So I don't know, but but that poor bastard looks like an idiot because that's how idiots look. Pro 86, Neil Howe's the author of The Fourth Turning is here book. Please have him on and read the book. The Fourth Turning, huh? Sounds interesting. I'm going to have to look that up. I don't know what it is. Let's look over at Rockfed. Oh, we got some people on Rockfin who wanted something to say. Ted Sawyer says, congratulations on the occasion of your award. Caught you earlier with GG. Yes, I've got the Serena Shimim Award, Serena Shim Award for journalism. It's for people who go out and push back against the system. And I'm very, very proud of that award, and I'm learning how to pronounce it even as we speak now. And so I think it's I think it's a great honor that someone would look at me and say, hey, Garland's doing brave journalism. It doesn't seem like brave journalism to me. I just say what I think. I mean, it's funny, I talked about the Jimmy Dore Cornell West controversy, and I had, yay, great job. I had other people, Garland's just trying to cover up for and his friends or something. I had so much craziness about that, but I said what I thought. All right, let's see. Next, thanks, Ted Sawyer. Gail Ben says, thanks for your wisdom. Thanks a lot, Gail. JVB is always in the house. He says, worth a fiver. A 15-minute city is either a place or a palace or a prison. The palace is not for you. Exactly. 15-minute cities. Did we ask for 15-minute cities? No, we didn't. They told us, you guys getting 15-minute cities. We don't want 15-minute cities. You don't have a 15-minute city. You rich bastards don't try to offer us one. Don't want it. Not interested. Again, what do you need a 15-minute city for? Control. It is a form of fascism. It is control the people. They can't move around unless they're told to. They can't move around of their own volition, etc. JVB, let's call neoliberalism gangster or mobster capitalism. Yeah, it is what capitalism has evolved into. One could argue that this is a branch to capitalism. The capitalism goes up like this and it could branch into this or branch into that. Or one could argue that this is what capitalism ultimately would have always evolve into. I don't know. The argument is irrelevant. This is what it has evolved into. I use the word often, neoliberal capitalism, because this is what the Western capitalism has evolved into. I would look at China and say that is what socialism has evolved into. Oh gosh. And I think that's it. I think we got another super chat. Did we get another super chat? Yes. Christopher says, US 14 barrels of oil, PPY to 8 now, and less than says it all. Well, I don't know what that means. US 14 barrels of oil, PPY to 8 now, and I don't know. That's I guess that's some kind of a cryptic thing, but thanks a lot there, Christopher Dobby. But remember something, and that is, I may not quite understand what you're getting at. So, thanks anyway. I don't really know what that's all about. But so at any rate, okay. PPY, somebody else got so much. Okay. Missykins says, got so much out of your Door West analysis. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I was just running off at the mouth. So, I heard oil prices might hit $100 a barrel soon. Yeah, they're going to continue to go up because Russia and Saudi Arabia basically. See, here's what happened. Let me say this. The U.S. empire got beside itself and it said, we're going to control everything. And when it came to Russia, they said, we're going to control the price of oil. And of course, the oil countries said, oh, that like hell you are. We'll show you. So now the U.S. empire has totally lost control of the oil prices, and now Russia and Saudi Arabia recently said the price of oil is too low and we want it higher. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to stop pumping enough oil to make drive the price up. So they're driving the price up. And that's, forget it. It ain't never coming back down. The days when you would have a recession and because there was less oil, the prices, less demand, the price would go down. Well, you know what? They figured it out. And when there's less demand and the price goes down, they're going to lower the amount of oil on the market. They're going to pump less and they're going to drive the price back up because it benefits them. They're saying to the United States, screw you. It benefits us to pay more. So if you suffer, that's your problem. Hey, man, two can play at that game. That's what we're looking at. Gerald Salente on. I had Gerald Salente on as well as David Knight. Okay, I've had Gerald Salente on. I'll have to contact him again. He's great. Will you have Jimmy Dore on soon? I don't know. I'll try. I'm pretty small potatoes. I don't know if I can get Jimmy or not. I can ask. I think that's it. All right. Thanks a lot, you all. I certainly appreciate it. It is 10 o'clock at night here in the Baltimore, Washington, Annapolis area, I guess as you call it, right? Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. I'm out. And don't forget, by the way, last but not least, if you can, Number one, go to rockfin.com/Garland Nixon and become a member. It doesn't cost anything to become a member. And if they throw me off YouTube, please, I want you to be there. Also, if you can, Rockfin does allow people to become, for $14.99 a month, to become a member. You don't have to do that, but if you can, I certainly would appreciate it, because it would help strengthen the channel and help keep Rockfin going. And if you sign up for a year, they take a couple months off. So if you can afford to become a subscriber on Rockfin, please do it. If you can't, just become a member. It doesn't cost anything. And if they throw me off YouTube, you won't have to search around for me. Patreon.com, that's certainly an option for supporting the channel. Buy Me a Coffee is a great option. A lot of people do that. And Buy Me a Coffee does like Patreon now. It's like Patreon in that you can just give like $5, $10, whatever you can afford. Or you can say, I want to be a monthly contributor, and you can do that monthly with the Buy Me a Coffee. So a lot of people like going that direction. Cash App is there. And of course, I better get rid of that Twitter at Garland Nixon, since they've stolen my account. At any rate, thanks a lot, you all. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Thanks a lot, everybody on Rockfin. Also, peace. I'm out.